Hello and welcome back to episode 4 of season 3 of the Experience Lounge podcast. It is great to have you all back. It is great to be back on this sunny Monday evening for me here in Singapore. We have got a very exciting episode today, and one I think has been in the making for months now. So we have the amazing Sunil Setlur on our podcast to talk about people experience and purpose this week. So incredible interview. But before we get into that and before I do his bio, Laura, how are you doing and how was your trip to London last week?
I am good. And it was good actually because I felt like it was true hybrid work in action. So all the things that actually we've talked about on the podcast before, that we've seen externally in a lot of the sort of press and on social media too. It was a trip where I had a lot of face-to-face meetings. The office, particularly on Wednesday, was buzzing with people, even so that my old boss came out and said it's 2019 in terms of the sort of vibe of people in the office. And I think that thing of it felt purposeful. It was great to have a lot of connection. Like we had some people over from Singapore, so we had like drinks in the evening and then a dinner the next night, and I just felt that was a great use of that face-to-face time. I would say as an introvert, for those that do know me well, I felt pretty depleted energy-wise though towards the end of those couple of days, and was like, I need to go home now and spend some time by myself in a quiet, dark room. But yeah, it was great, and I do think a good example of going into the office, it being purposeful and about that connection, and then doing other work. So your video calls, emails, if you need focus time to do papers, that sort of thing at home. It really felt like that was a good use of time. So yes, it was great. How has your week been?
Yeah, so far so good. Monday, I made it through. And yeah, no, feeling good. I am prepping. I mentioned this in a previous episode. I'm prepping for a face-to-face workshop for the first time in a long time. And so that has actually been so exciting for me because I am that person that loves stationery. I live for stationery purchases.
I love stationery.
So I just love it. So all the new fresh Sharpies are coming out, all the new stickers, all the new like whiteboard paper. Oh, can't wait. So exciting. So yeah, no, all good. Well, sounds like we have had a good week and a bit, which is nice. And as I said, super excited about this episode where Sunil joined us. So before we jump into the interview, let me just do a quick bio on Sunil. So Sunil Setlur is the Chief People Officer at Gojek. He joined Gojek in 2019 and leads all aspects of human resource management at the company, with his function supporting thousands of employees around Southeast Asia. A seasoned HR leader, Sunil has nearly more than 2 decades of experience in the industry. Prior to joining Gojek, he led HR for Google's partnerships business in APAC and was a senior HR business partner with Amazon, where he was in charge of HR for groups spanning multiple functions and business lines. He started his career at Accenture and took on a number of leadership roles during his time there, including leading HR for Accenture's healthcare management operations group in the Philippines. Sunil holds a bachelor's degree in industrial relations, economics, and sociology from Bangalore University, as well as a postgraduate certificate in human capital management, which is just amazing. And he is super, super impressive. And I've worked with Sunil now for a while, and his team. They are a brilliant bunch. And he is just so full of insights and energy. So we're super excited for this episode, right?
Yes, and I wasn't able to actually make it just due to schedules and actually being in London. So I'm excited to also to listen as well once the episode goes live.
Cool. Well, enjoy. Let's get into it. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Experience Lounge podcast, season 3, episode who knows, we've done so many now. Today is a super exciting one for me. I'm delighted to be joined by Sunil Setlur, who is the Chief People Officer at Gojek. We've worked together for some time, so hopefully this will be a nice, casual, fun conversation where we get to pick his brains on all things employee experience. So Sunil, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for your time. Why don't we get started with a little bit about you, your background, what do you love doing? Tell us about your history in HR, a bit of everything.
Thanks for having me on, Sasha. Nice to be in the lounge finally. I've been in HR for a little under 2 decades, and I think I've done pretty much every role in the function. and it's been exciting. It's gotten more fun the longer I've been in it. I've had a chance to work at different organizations at different points in their journey. So I've worked with Accenture, I worked with Amazon, I worked with Google, and now I'm with Gojek. And I think Gojek is my favorite stint yet. Uh, Outside of work, I don't really give myself too much time to do anything outside of work. But lately, I've been experimenting with biohacking. So I'm doing a few experiments this year. So my current experiment is run a mile a day, and I'm about 10 days in. So I've run about 10 miles. I want to see what it does to my brain and body, and I'm going to be doing different experiments through the year to see what it does to me.
Oh my goodness. Well, I mean, that certainly trumps my Netflix binge watching hobby that I seem to have developed over the last few months. So yeah, fair play to you. So tell us a little bit more about what led you to HR. Like, why would you choose HR as a profession if biohacking is your hobby?
My hobbies change every few years. So if I followed my hobby into a professional rhythm, I'd be doing I'd be a hobo, I think. Um, but no, I've always I studied for HR. I did my undergraduate studies in industrial relations, sociology, and economics. So I really wanted to get into the field. I was excited by it. I was really motivated, I think, on some level to help people um, meet the outcomes they're setting out to do, but also on a much more grander level, it was an opportunity to architect communities and societies, which sounds more glamorous than it is, but it was a way to organize people to goals and to outcomes, and that's the thing that excites me. And the longer I've spent in the profession, the more I've been able to do that, and the more that's become the meat and potatoes of the role. So yeah, that's why I'm in HR. I love getting large groups of people from point A to B. Um, and my hobbies are my hobbies. I spent 2 years writing fiction. I spent a whole year playing badminton. They keep changing.
Okay, fair enough. I'm seeing a pattern here, and we can't wait for the book release. It sounds like it's going to be an amazing piece of fiction. So let's talk a little bit then, based on your experience in HR and what you've seen change over time. Employee experience as a concept, or as something we explore in HR, is relatively new, at least in terms of the trends we see passing through HR. How has your perception of employee experience changed or evolved since you started out in the profession?
So that's a good question. I think what employee experience has meant, it's meant different things at different points in time, and it's meant different things in different organizations. Uh, when I first started working, almost like 19 years ago, employee experience was a newish concept. I think employee engagement surveys were in on vogue, like they were the new thing, and people were beginning to take them seriously. It wasn't just a survey you ran and checked the box. People were beginning to take them seriously. People were being assessed on performance of those, how they performed on those surveys, etc. And I think the evolution I've seen, if I can categorize it more generally, is it's gone from being very top down and directive to much more employee led and personal. When I first started, employee experience was very optimized around how can we get people more productive. Like, how we have all this work to do, and we need to get all things that get in the way of people doing the work. So it was very much around, if you look at the old engagement surveys, they're all about how much discretionary effort you put in, how much organizational processes helped or hindered you, things like that. So I think today what I'm seeing is a very different vantage point, like a different version of employee experience. I think what employee experience is being co-authored by both employees and the employer, and functions like people and culture and HR can play that bridge role, translating one to the other. And we've certainly seen that in Gojek, where we've seen that over the last 3 years. Gojek always had a culture of our founders listening and caring about what the people had to say. And in the last 3 years, we've grown tremendously, both in every conceivable way. But so have our listening programs. So have how much investment we put in, that action loop of, hey, what can we do to make your life a little bit better? What can we do to make your work experience at Gojek a bit more delightful? And then we take that feedback away, we solve the problem, we root cause, we put systems in place, and we close loop. It's a very quick iteration way of working, versus in the old days when it was this one mega survey at the start of the year. You did it, and you just worked away at it, and you waited for the next survey to see if that stuff had outcomes. Now we do pulses. Now we iterate and change so quickly. Employee preferences change so quickly as business needs evolve, as our org structure evolves. So I think the velocity of change, the pace at which people operate and work has really, really changed. So I think that's the big difference I've seen. I think people have way more authorship now. It's not just about what are the things I need to do to get more productive. It's also, how can I get into the flow of things? How can I connect to purpose and meaning? What is an optimized workflow for me relative to how I need to meet my goals? I think there's a lot more personalization than there's ever been.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I know that you refer to employee experience internally as people experience. And I almost think that is part of the humanization of EX as a concept. It's no longer human resource or employee, but actually looking at the person in the organization. And you're right, it's not just about how do we maximize productivity. It's, how do we build an environment where this individual will thrive, and going beyond just, do we give people the right tools, or do we block people from getting work done? And I think that's quite powerful. And I think we see a lot of organizations catching up. And I think the startup sphere is a huge component of that progress. And I think a lot of larger organizations look to organizations like Gojek and similar startups to see, how are you building those connections with employees? How do you become those employees of choice, right? For Gen Z and people entering the workforce, they want to join because they see that personal people experience. So I think that's super powerful. What do you think then, and this is a bit of a segue, or, slightly a build really on what you were just saying, but what do you think are some of the major EX or PX considerations, right? Starting maybe with Gojek and then looking at the kind of broader organization ecosystem, like what are the EX considerations and priorities today?
I think the big one obviously is connecting to purpose. I think helping connect people and making sure that their value systems align to the company's way of doing things and the company's outcomes. It sounds woo woo when I use those words to describe it, but it's very, very real. Let me take Gojek as an example. I think most people would tell you that they're in Gojek because of the social impact we're having as an organization. We literally on a daily basis positively impact the lives of millions of people, tens of millions of people, in Indonesia and elsewhere, and it's a very palpable feeling. Like your friends are talking about it, your family is talking about it, your cohort's talking about it. Everyone's using your product. I think there's a thrill and excitement to changing the way a society lives and works and moves, and we've had to carve that place for ourselves as an organization, and have that impact. And as we've grown, I think the challenge and the opportunity has really been in helping people stay connected to purpose. When you're much smaller and you're having very real conversations and you're doing like 10 different roles at the same time, it's easy to feel connected to all the real impact and all the real issues in the company. But as you grow larger and get more specialized, I think you need to be more intentional in the way you connect people to impact. And that's the journey we're on right now. We have lots of specialization. We have people dedicatedly thinking about one problem very deeply, or one way of operating very deeply, and helping them see how that ties back to A, social impact, and B, just their own personal values is I think an essential part of the people experience at work. Because if it's just about having a nice brand and a good salary, etc., that's not enough. Like, there's enough employers out there who can offer that, right? If someone is optimizing for those things, there's plenty of choice. But we find increasingly, especially with Gen Z, Gen Y, it's more than that. It's about the company you work for really, really projecting or acting as a proxy for who you are as a person, like what your value system is. So that, I think that's where I see people experience go, which is how do we make that feeling come alive in every touch point within the organization, everything from the mundane to the super strategic. How a claims process works is the most mundane thing in an organization. How can we connect that back to what impact the company is having, what's important to the customer? It leads to decisions like, we won't ask for receipts or bills for anything under X dollars, because we trust you. We know you're using good judgment. We know you're doing things that are aligned with our values. So we don't need all of this. So things like that, and very strategic things like, what product or service line are we going to launch next? And what are the trade-offs we will make, and what are the trade-offs we will not make? I think those kinds of conversations as well. So I think that consistency in voice, especially on the values and purpose side, is very, very important. And it manifests in like dozens of ways across the organization. And I think when you're smaller, it's very organic. And as you get larger, you need to get very intentional about which things get amplified and which things don't. And I think that's the journey of exploration we're on right now.
Yeah. Putting you on the spot a bit here, you've alluded to this already. Gojek is going to continue to grow and grow, and we've seen that. And over the next few years, especially. Practically, how do you see your organization keeping that purpose at the heart of the people experience?
It's a complex question, but it has a relatively simple answer. I think it's an old answer. It's values. It's what you value, measure, amplify. That gets emulated and perpetuated. We have. This year, we're going to be doing a whole bunch of things around refreshing our values. We're looking at cultural ambassadors. We're looking at role models. We're looking at amplifying good behavior. You've hopefully attended a few of our company-wide town halls, and every town hall, we have a ritual where we talk about one impact story at the end of the town hall, where we talk about how Gojek has changed a driver's life, a merchant's life, a customer's life, right? We talk about it every town hall, and those are real stories. Those are not PR plants, or those are people who genuinely feel like we've made an impact. And I think keeping that volume up is important, and it's really being everywhere all the time. So when you set your goals, are those goals aligned to impact? When you do assessments, performance reviews, are they aligned to the impact you've had? When you interact with each other, what are you optimizing for? And is there a vocabulary in the company to talk about these things in a consistent way? So I think these are some mechanisms to allow it to scale. And I think if it works for 3,000, it'll work for 5. If it works for 5, you found a way to perpetuate the system. So everything from, if I were to use an HR lens to this, everything from hire to retire, every single thing has to connect to purpose in some fundamental way. Even compliance bits has to connect to purpose, right? Being in business is a great way to continue having impact. Paying your people well is a great way to ensure that the right minds are solving these very challenging problems. And that connects back to impact again. So it's very, very important to nail that. And I personally believe, and I'm really happy that Gojek believes that as well, that we are a very purpose-led organization. We're mission focused in ways that a lot of other companies are not. And I think that's just a product of how real the product we put out is. I think it's a if you're living it, you're breathing it, you're using it. People use our food app to basically not cook, right? Three meals a day delivered home. You want to go out, use our app. So yeah, I think we're also in the space where we're a consumer product company. It's an iconic consumer product, and it's everywhere. So you feel it. It becomes a bit of an echo chamber, and in a good way. So
yeah, definitely. And I mean, I've seen firsthand, like you say, you reference the town halls. There's just such a buzz and an attachment to the brand, right? In a way that is quite unique. And, people really buy into Gojek as, wanting to wear the merch, wanting to get involved in as many internal events as possible. And it's so nice to see that vigor, that zest for a brand. And you're right. I think, so often when we talk about EX, even so on the podcast, we're guilty of doing this. We think almost so granular about all the different elements that make up an employee's journey. And we don't really talk about that attachment, that bond that someone has with the purpose of the organization. So I think that's it's quite beautiful. It's a really nice way of thinking about it. And I think you're right. It's quite unique to Gojek. So just looking at EX as a concept within Gojek, and obviously you're a senior leader, you're working with senior leaders all the time. Are they bought into people experience? Do they recognize this as being strategically valuable? And have you ever come up against any kind of friction around people experience as a priority?
Yes and no. I think, does everyone agree that their people need to have a fantastic experience and deliver great outcomes? Yes. I think the debate is always on the path to get there. Our leadership team spans many generations. I think there are pedants who believe that, hey, we need to be very directive in the way this works, and we have people on the other end of the spectrum saying we should be completely employee led, almost bordering on a holacracy, where the individual decides what the right thing to do is. So I think what that means is different for different people. And then you apply organizational constraints, so things like budgets, goals, milestones, product launches, and then you kind of land in this, like I would say, a healthy compromise of what that manifests as. We've taken some bold calls, right? We've taken a very strong stance saying it may sound passé, but all of our employees have laptops, and not all of them need laptops, right? And a lot of our peer organizations don't follow that practice. So when the pandemic hit, all our people were pandemic ready. They were work from home ready. It doesn't sound like a big deal, but it was a very conscious stand we took. We've always been a distributed company. We were born in Indonesia, but we very rapidly established offices in Singapore, in India, in Vietnam, Thailand. And we've always been a distributed company, and that was a conscious choice we took. A lot of other companies would kind of default to, let me stay in my home market, figure this out, and then set up field offices elsewhere. But we've always been bold in the choices we make, and I think that boldness has led to an almost enlightened perspective on employee experience, because we've had to listen to so many voices, and we've had to optimize for so many different types of experiences so early on in our journey, that it's made us who we are, and we are a wonderful place. We're democratic. People feel a sense of authorship on their work. There's a great there's a great energy, like you said, like people feel connected and really want to do meaningful things. So I think that exists. But as far as senior leadership goes, I find my role is that balancer role of trying to say all the definitions that you have, all the expectations our people have, and the outcomes that our ecosystems depends on us for. All of this informs what our people experience should be, right? It's easy to blow 100% of your budget on high salaries, let's say, people are not going to be happy with that, right? It's easy to have the best offices around, but maybe not balance out other aspects of your job. Maybe you're burning them out or something else. And there's this sweet spot that you need to hit with people experience, which is between we need to meet our goals and we need to achieve our purpose, and we need to help individuals do that or help us do that in a flow that's optimized for them. And finding that balance is the labor of love, right? Is what I do and what my team does. And obviously we do it from a systems thinking approach, which is how do we optimize the many systems we have so there's enough choice within a system that people can optimize for themselves and for what makes them effective. But there are also enough nudges within those choices that you're constantly reminded that you're doing this to an end game. You're serving a larger purpose. And I think that trade-off is the debate. Sometimes you have to go in a bit. Some people prefer going in a bit harder. Some people prefer being more dialogue-led. And I think that's the balance. So long-winded answer to a simple question, I think.
It's fine. Slightly granular question here. Do you find that senior leaders often come with their own view on what employee experience is, and it's hard for you to get everybody on the same page? Was that a struggle for you?
Senior leaders do come with, especially if they've worked for a while, like, if you work for the last 30 years, 25 years somewhere, when I joined the company, I brought my own worldview to how, people should be managed, people should be empowered, or what was okay to share, what was not okay to share, like, things like that. I think people bring with them their experience, their preferences, their wisdom, so to speak, of what's worked and what's not worked. I think the opportunity space is obviously getting the value of that experience, but also balancing it with what we're trying to do as an organization. So there is especially the more senior you get, there's a bit of a tug of war, and there has to be equilibrium. Like, somebody has to give a little, somebody has to get a little, and that goes on for a while till everyone finds a balance, right? And typically, when you bring a very senior person in, you're bringing them in because you feel like they can help you achieve certain outcomes. And culture is a very powerful engine for outcomes, as you know. So if they want to change a culture, good example, let's assume you've had a sales team, and it's, there are sales teams which are target and incentive oriented, and that's a people experience. So it's very go, close my numbers every quarter, get my bonus. And there are sales teams which are encouraged to think more long term, which is, it doesn't matter how many deals you close. It doesn't change your bonus number. Your performance changes your bonus number, but not how many deals you close. So those choices, depending on what you want. You want to land a whale, you need to have people who are thinking long term, engaging long term. You want to net a whole bunch of minnows, you need that sales incentive program. And depending on what your business strategy is, you deploy a different approach, and a leader may bring a certain approach with them, saying, look, I need to grow this business by triple digit percentage rates. This is the opportunity space. The market is full of small and medium enterprise users who are willing to pay us money for this. We need to get our guys out there and close deals very quickly. If that's the game, and they want to change the culture, and if our culture was earlier, no, it's all about the big picture, I think that's the negotiation that happens. Sales is always an easy example to use, but that amplifies into other functions like engineering, product management, HR, legal, etc.
For sure. A nice healthy debate, I think, around what it means and how do we apply it, like you say, across the entire organization. You've alluded to this a bit, and I hate to bring the C word up, but I will. COVID has been a huge issue for so many organizations. Now, it's obviously shaped a lot of what we talk around the future of work. When I look at the predictions for this year, some of them are totally outlandish. Other ones are still kind of rooted in this hybrid working, getting that right. What's your take on the future of employee experience? What do you see emerging over the next 2 to 3 years that will really redefine employee experience?
In a phrase, personalization at scale. I think we've entered the post office era. I think all of us have gotten really good at the transactional aspects of work. We're very good at coordinating with each other remotely, getting work done. Things have moved on. Lots of companies have been locked in for a couple of years now. They've been doing well. Uh, I think there is a dimension of work which is relational, social, and communal, which hasn't been addressed yet. And I think that's where people are trying to figure out different solutions. Everything from come back to office a few days a week to let's meet on a beach in VR land, right? So, and I think those experiments will continue for a while, and every organization will find its own answer. It depends on your business. Gojek, for instance, has a large feet on street workforce for whom work from home was never real. They've always had to be out there in the real world doing things. And we also have a significant portion of our employees who work from home and who can work from home indefinitely if they want to. So you have to balance that out. And I think there are these three tension points to balance out, which is what do you want to enable? What are individual preferences, and what is possible within a role. Like some roles, field operations, for instance, you can't have a work from home. Some roles, like maybe database administrator, you can indefinitely work from home. So what are the preferences of people, and in what context do we want them to show up? I think that's the grand experiment that's currently on. We've been polling people ever since COVID began, asking them for their preferences, saying, what are your preferred modes of working? Where would you like to work more often? And, initially it was like, oh, work from home is great. So the volume of people who said work from home is like here to stay, I'm bought in, was high. And then as time has gone by, the number of people I want to come back to office a few days a week has grown bigger. And I think the number of people saying I want to work remote has either expanded or shrunk depending on the situation at that point in time. So employee preferences, and now we have 2 years worth of data. Employee preferences have changed as well, and at some point, the only thing I can see as reason for change is life stage change or life goals changing. I don't know how many, for instance, we don't know meaningfully how many employees are still in their home office, are based where their home office is based. A lot of them will come back to work if you ask them to, but a lot of them have moved to different parts of the countries they're in to have a better quality of life, to be closer to family, to have made other choices. So, and they've shown successfully that they can work. So I think companies need to solve for those three dimensions. They have to find that sweet spot for themselves. But fundamentally, you have to strike the right balance between the transactional aspects of work, and the communal aspects of work. And in a company like ours, in Gojek, where culture drives innovation, where a lot of our energy, ideas, etc., comes from people mashing together, thrashing out ideas, experiencing things the same way. That's going to be an interesting journey to be on, because how do you enable those things in a way that's inclusive, in a way that makes sure that irrespective of the choices or your preferences or your role limitations, you still have that same experience. So a lot of companies are going to try and optimize for common sets of experiences. I don't think you can have a homogeneous experience anymore. And I think that's the thing that everyone's wondering about, which is what does that look like? Like how can I make my company mean the same thing to you, even though you're in all these different contexts? And is there an answer? I think jury's out. Like we're still trying different things, and we probably will be for a while before we find that answer.
I think that's really quite interesting, because so many people, I'm sure, listening to this would be like, agree, definitely think that, major personalization, and it is a real experiment going on at the moment. I'm sure the first thing people jump to is, how do we do that at scale, right? So if we don't have this blanket experience, which I think you're 100% right, it can't be that way, because people will work differently. You know, they will want different things from their employers. Some will work a few days in the office, some won't. You know, how do we drive that personalization? And maybe that's what we need to figure out over the next few years. And I hope that there are some good solutions and consultants, much better consultants than me, that can figure that one out. So that would be great. So we're wrapping up now. I've got one more question for you. Kind of touched on this when we first started. If you weren't in the HR and people sphere, what would you be doing?
You sent me this question before we started, and I've been racking my brain. I don't know. I think I might have pursued psychiatry or something in the academe, because that's where my brain naturally goes. Like I read research papers for fun. So it's, maybe that's my calling for my second or third career. But yeah, it's probably a space of ideas, like, ideas about how groups of people interact with each other, ideas about how we can organize communities, architect communities and outcomes for those communities. So I think it's that. I think that's where I would likely end up. I might still end up there. I don't know. Lifespans being what they are. With my biohacking, might end up living to 150.
I love it. Yeah, well, fingers crossed that works out for you. Good luck with your biohacking. I'd be interested in the results. I'm sure everybody else would as well. But no, I could definitely see you going down the kind of academia route. That would really suit you well. So great. Well, thank you, Sunil, so much for coming on. It's been so great. I feel almost like we've paused a bit, in a good way, to really be quite thoughtful about the topic of people experience. And so I've really enjoyed the conversation, and I've enjoyed working with you as well as a people experience leader, as a HR leader, because you are so thoughtful about these things and you really consider what is it that draws people to work with us. And I think taking the time to look at that and the complexity and that kind of interesting dynamic is so powerful, and yeah, just amazing. So thank you so much. I hope that's left you on a high. You're going to be walking around like, wow, I'm just such an amazing leader. But no, honestly, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. And if people want to connect with you, you're happy with them to reach out to you on LinkedIn?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially if they have ideas on all the things we talked about. I'm always keen to find new ideas. And Sasha, thanks for having me on. This has been a fun conversation. It certainly got me thinking even more about some of the things we're doing.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.